Now, if you would like to turn on closed captioning, go to your control panel, and it's in the same area as the mute and video and all of that fun stuff. It should say closed caption or transcript. And this project and all of our continuing education is made possible by a Library Services and Technology Act grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services and administered by us, the South Carolina State Library. And we will go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be talking about a few things. We'll look at how to conduct a reference interview to find out just what information the patron needs. We'll look at identifying and selecting sources based on the patron's information need, and also problem solving some of those difficult questions. Apologies if I pause. I'm trying to keep track of who's entering the meeting here. So you may have had this experience of a patron coming to the desk with a very vague, perhaps unclear question, and you're thinking, well, this should be simple, but why did you not ask for what you needed to begin with? A few reasons for that. Sometimes patrons are nervous and they don't want to bother the staff. They think, oh, the librarian is not there for this silly question. They may not be sure exactly what they need. They don't believe that we can help them with what they need. They might be embarrassed to need the information. Some people do come to the library with some pretty personal and sensitive topics, or they're embarrassed to need help searching for the information. So there are ways to ask in a tactful and informative way of how we can help them with that sort of thing. So, and this is a little bit more customer servicey, but I think it always bears repeating. When a patron comes to the desk, it's very easy to get in a habit of not looking up and greeting the patron. You know, you might be checking your email or responding to a coworker about something else, or, you know, thinking about other tasks that you have to do or programs that you're doing throughout the day. But try to get in the habit of looking up when someone approaches the desk, smile, greet them, ask if they need any help, or say something like, well, you know, if you need anything, just let us know. It's always good to open the contact before they feel like they need. You'll get the patrons sometimes hovering, you know, 10 or 20 feet away from the desk, kind of floating back and forth like, oh, maybe they should ask, maybe they shouldn't, or waiting until other people are not standing near. So they may be helpful. Or you may see that some patrons don't come up to the desk at all, and you'll find them wandering among the shelves looking a little confused. So at that point, meet them at their point of need. Make a point to just do a little walk around every once in a while, see if anybody is there that might be looking confused or puzzled. A lot of times patrons don't know all of the resources that we have to offer. So if they don't see it on the shelf, they assume that we don't have it or can't get to it. So if you ask them, you know, is there something you're looking for? Are you finding everything you need? It's kind of an open-ended way to let them know that we're here to help them. Be aware of book shaming. And not everybody likes every book, but you don't have to enjoy a particular book or a particular genre to appreciate that someone else might enjoy it. So regardless of your particular opinion of a genre, or, well, that's not real literature, people are strangely sensitive about their reading material, and they may be uncomfortable coming in and asking for a romance novel or a graphic novel, or, you know, something unusual like, oh, I read kids books or young adult literature, that sort of thing. So make sure that they feel as though those things are open to them. And as always, avoid jargon. Maybe instead of circulation, you call it checkout, or, online catalog sometimes is confusing. So help them out by avoiding all those library jargony terms. So the reference interview. Now, sometimes it's as simple finding what they need as just saying, oh, you want the latest Nora Roberts book. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. They may not remember even the title, and you'll have to look up which one is her latest, but that's pretty straightforward. You don't have to think too much about that. But sometimes you have to dig a little bit. So we have a few different types of questions that are useful, and you can start with some of these to dig down into what they're looking for. So paraphrasing is sort of a restating of their request to let them, first of all, to let them know that you're listening, and second of all, to kind of pinpoint what it is that they need. They may have sort of a long explanation, and you can maybe distill it down into, okay, so if I understand you right, you're looking for the latest book in this particular series by this author. Open-ended questions are always good, and in general, that's a nice place to start, particularly if things are a little bit more vague, like, oh, I need help with a computer question. That's very open-ended. So, okay, what kind of information do you need there? Encourage, this is a good question for patrons who are maybe a little limited in their information that they give you, and you're kind of having to draw things out. So what kind of information are you looking for? That sort of thing. Closed-ended questions, something like, is this for a school project? Or is this for your reading? Specific detail-oriented can get you a little more details, because if it's for school, it's going to look very different than if it's for a question they have about their own medical condition or situation, or, for reading in general. Clarifying, you can ask them for which option they prefer. Do you prefer books, articles, both? Do you want a print resource or an electronic? That kind of thing. When is this due? Anything that narrows down your parameters would be a clarifying question. And this also is where it's important to be a little bit careful in what you ask, because some people are very private with what information, and they'll feel like you're prying. So you have to walk a very fine line with I'm not asking this because I want to be up in your business. I'm asking this in order to make sure that we get you the correct help that you need, particularly with more personal things, medical questions, questions about self-help kind of things. Like if someone comes up and says, where are your self-help books? You might say, well, that's a very broad topic. Is there a particular genre something you were looking for, or a specific title you had in mind? So just be aware when asking the questions that some people are going to be a little resistant, particularly if their question is sort of a sensitive nature. So we have what we call the 6 pieces of evidence. And honestly, I'm not quite sure where that phrase came from, but it's similar to if you've ever done journalism or that sort of thing: who, what, when, where, why, that sort of thing. So what you're trying to get to is, what does the patron really want to know? They may start off very vague, and you need to get more into the specifics. So who is your patron? How does that affect what they need? Is this a research paper for a college student, or is this homework for a 4th grader? Are they looking for this medical information for themselves, or because they're in nursing school, or because maybe they have an elderly parent or family member that they need to translate this to? So what's the actual end goal here? Where did the patron hear about this, or what prompted it? This is useful. You sometimes get patrons who will come and say, well, this book that I saw on TV the other day, or maybe it's a homework assignment that they had. Similarly, why does the patron need the information? Is it for a school project? Is it for personal use? Is it for their child? You can narrow it down that way. When is a super important question. If you've ever dealt with a patron who needed research for a college paper or a high school paper that's due on Monday, it's not helpful to them to say, well, we can do this interlibrary loan and you'll get it in about a week and a half. Nope, they need something they can look up right now. So, and also what format? Do they want print resources? Do they want journals? Do they want electronic resources? Should we email it to them? Should we help them look it up right now? What exactly do they need? This also covers, what's their reading level? You're not going to get the same book for a 3rd grader that you are for a graduate student. You're not going to get the same material for a 3-page essay than you would for a 30-page thesis paper. So, a little context will help guide you to what information you're going to need. A few tips and tricks, and then we have some practice and discussion materials here. For starters, if they're wanting a book and they're kind of nebulous as to what, take them to the shelf, let them look through, show them a few things, maybe look at the table of contents or the index terms. They may be able to more clearly articulate. And also, if they're in the stacks with you instead of at the desk where everyone is around, sometimes they feel that's a more private setting for asking more detailed questions. For example, I had a patron once come up and say, I need books about pregnancy. So we walk over to the medical area, and I'm showing her the what to expect when you're expecting kind of books. And she says, well, it's for my daughter. She's in college, she's pregnant, and she's not sure what she wants to do about this. That's a little bit different question than, hey, I'm pregnant. What do I, So that's not something that they probably will lead with. You need to ease into it a little. This next one, if you're unsure of a topic, Wikipedia is a very good place to start for a very broad range of things. A lot of library staff, or if you're working, in more of an academic setting or dealing with college students, the teachers, professors, whatever, will say, well, no, Wikipedia is not an acceptable source. But if you have absolutely nowhere where to start with a question and it's not something you're familiar with, Wikipedia is actually a really good place to get a basic understanding and get a little direction. And it's useful for that. Also, while you're searching, explain to the patron what you're doing. Better yet, if you can demonstrate to them. This does a couple of things. First of all, it ensures them that you're not just sitting there typing on a computer and ignoring them. It's very uncomfortable to sit and wait while someone else is working, and they may think, oh, she's not actually doing anything for me. And also they may have input as you go along of, oh, no, that's not really what I'm looking for. What I think I need is this. So if you're involving them in the search process, they can help you refine and tweak the results. Accuracy matters. Cite your sources, even if it's, they ask, how do I spell this particular word? Even if you're pretty sure how to spell it and it's a simple word, grab a dictionary, look it up, say, well, according to Merriam-Webster, it's spelled like this. That makes it look a little bit more official, and it kind of helps give confidence to your answers. If it's for a school assignment, ask if they have the syllabus or the handout that the teacher gave them to describe the assignment, because their memory is not always perfect. Most people's memory is not always perfect. So having the assignment in hand is really great, especially if it's the parent who wasn't there when the teacher was explaining or didn't have the context of being in the class at that moment. So a few more tips and tricks here. Use alternate subject terms to widen or narrow. For example, you may be calling it climate change, or you may also call it global warming. Think of it that way. Break the question down into parts. This is particularly useful with sort of research type questions. Okay, they need to know the effect on the environmental change in thus and such because of population growth in, number of cars per capita in China. Okay, break it down. A lot of students will want a particular resource that deals exactly with that topic, but you may be able to only find, well, here's what talks about, how much emissions one car gives off versus here you talk about population growth. You find different pieces for different parts of the question. It's not sometimes as easy as finding just the one source for everything. Try to get the patron to think more about the details or what they remember, particularly for those questions about what book they remembered as a child that they now want to read to their own child. Okay, what time period was it? Do you remember the character's name? Oh, the character had a dog. Okay, books with dogs. As much detail as you can get. Some of it will be relevant and some of it will not. And also, try to help them figure out or articulate not just their actual information need or their problem, but what their ideal end result will look like. Like, oh, I want to find this book so that I can read it to my child, or I want to write a paper about this topic, or I need to solve this particular computer problem. It's especially helpful with computer problems because a lot of people will say something like, how do I fix my iPhone that's doing thus and such? When what they really need is, I want to use it for this purpose. Is there an app? Reader's advisory is something that a lot of people find a little bit challenging. And the best advice I've ever had for the reader's advisory sort of questions was, ask what the last book they enjoyed was, and what did they enjoy about it, and would they like something similar? That gives you a jumping off point. Not only topic, author, theme, whatever, but also the tone, the writing style, the mood of the book, that sort of thing. And how to read a book in 5 minutes. This is something that you're not actually reading the book. It's more like how to effectively book talk or review a book in 5 minutes. So you're looking at things like the cover art. You know, sometimes the cover art denotes what type of genre or subgenre you're getting, or what audience it appeals to. You look at the synopsis. Is it something, you know, does it describe as a quick read or an in-depth study or great characters? If you look inside at the content, you know, you may have the patron saying, well, I want something that's a light read. It's fast. It's quick paced and keeps my attention. Usually that would be like shorter sentences, shorter paragraphs and chapters, action, like action scenes, dialogue, a little less on the description, versus something like, if you've picked up anything like The Hobbit is a good one. You have those big, long expository descriptions of the beautiful terrain and setting, which are lovely, but they don't read quickly. So, you know, if you want, you know, if the last book the patron read was something sort of fantasy sci-fi with a lot of the world building and the setting and descriptive narrative versus fast-paced fight scenes, lots of action, you know, you can get a sense of that via the writing. If you're stuck on types of books, novelist is great. Everybody has a subscription through our Discus, which we'll look at in a little bit, of novelist, which will give you reader's advisory not only by plot, but also by tone, theme, that kind of thing. A few other things: fantastic fiction, which book, award winners for various genres are a big help. The book news, if you keep up with that, you can kind of see what is trending, which is helpful. Technology reference is something that a lot of people dread because it tends to be very high pressure, and, oh no, I need to print this document out right now, and my computer's crashed and it should be saved to my phone and it should be this. And there's a lot of confusion, you know, maybe their device doesn't look like what you're used to. My philosophy on technology reference is, in general, someone has already figured out how to do what you need with the piece of technology that you have. All you have to do is figure out how to search for their directions. So, like, maybe you're not great with Excel spreadsheets, but the patron really needs to sort these two tables by average number or color of the cell or filter by month or whatever it is. If you can articulate the problem and type it into the help feature, you're probably more than halfway there. This again, try to get the patron to focus on what they want the technology to do. A lot of people will ask what they want information about or what they think they want, like, oh, I need information about formulas in spreadsheets. Okay, so what do you want the formula to do? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? And if you can get to that, it's much easier to search for the end result than it is to search for the process. Like, how do you do the specific formula? Also, think about what part of the computer might be giving them an issue. You know, is that they're not connected to the internet? Is their device, is there something going wrong with the computer or with the program itself that might want to restart? Is it something in their settings? Is it a particular app or program that they need? And the other thing that I heard just recently, that this is an excellent point, is a lot of people say, well, you know, it's very hard with the mobile devices because there's so many different ones. But happily, we've kind of narrowed that down. Most cell phones nowadays are either iPhone or Android. Those are your two choices. If you happen to own one, make a point to get familiar with the other. But typically you're not going to be seeing a lot of variety. They've managed to streamline it down to iPhone, Android in terms of phone operating systems. So that actually makes it a lot easier, I think. Also, just as a reminder, what we can't do to help people. We cannot give legal advice. We cannot give medical advice. We also cannot handle their confidential information or advise them on financial matters. So we can give them the tax forms, but we cannot tell them how to file their taxes. Very relevant today, of course. We can print them out the South Carolina landlord-tenant agreement form, but we cannot tell them how to interpret that form. We can look up lists of side effects on Medline Plus for the new drug that they're taking, but we cannot tell them how it may interact with other things. We cannot interpret that medical advice. This tends to be sort of a fine line sometimes, and I'm sure you've probably had patrons that really want for you to give them more advice than we're able to. Likewise, for handling confidential information, oh, I need to sign up for this particular job or program or bank account, or can you just take my credit card and type in the number for me? No, we cannot do that. That is a huge liability. Please don't do that. So it's very difficult sometimes because people struggle and we want to help, but don't do that. Oh. Okay, so that's kind of a quick overview, and we have not had a whole lot of discussion about these things. So let's take a look at some sample questions. I'm going to pull up a few slides back here. Here with the 6 pieces of evidence, and we'll get some sample questions here. I have sample questions, but does anyone have a specific question you'd like to share in chat that was kind of a stumper for you that you had trouble with, or something that you found particularly challenging or confusing? Feel free to share in chat, and I will share some examples as well. So what we're going to do here is not just specifically answer the question, but talk about what information we will need to get to an answer. I'm less concerned about, oh, I know the answer to that, than what questions might you ask the patron to figure out what they need. So start with an easy one. Say you're at the desk and a student, maybe sort of 10 years old age range, sort of middle elementary grade, comes to the desk and says, do you have any history books? Where's your history section? What would you suppose you would answer to this person? All right. How would you start off with that question? Feel free to type in chat. Yes, great. A specific time period. What else? Yes, if there's a particular historical event, what do you need this information for? So he says it's a school book report. He's doing a report for school. A specific person, yes. So you're narrowing it down. This is pretty straightforward. How many pages does your report have to be? Excellent. Book sources are online. Very good. Yeah, that one goes pretty quickly. This actually was a question that I got, and I particularly thought it was relevant because the student asked for the history section, but what he really wanted was, he was doing a report on Martin Luther King, and he actually needed the biographies, which in that particular library branch were separate from the history books. So I could have taken him to the history section and he would not have found his person. But all of these are great questions, yes. How about an older patron comes to the desk with his new smartphone. He says his granddaughter bought it from, yes, can you show me the assignment? That's always good. He says his granddaughter bought him for this phone. She lives in New York, so she's not here to help him with it. She had mentioned that she wanted him to do some sort of face something or other. He wasn't really sure what, and he's not super comfortable with technology. Where do you start on that one? He has his new smartphone. Okay. What sort of thing is it supposed to do? Was it a video chat or online? What kind of phone? Yes, great questions. Yes. Can he call her and get her on the phone? That's a great question. Exactly, yeah. The face something or other could be Facebook, it could be FaceTime, it could be face recognition unlock to unlock your phone. Um, yeah, so great, great questions there. How about patron comes in wanting to know about a particular heart medication. It's like, I've got this particular heart medication. How would you start with that? Good point. What do you want something to take home with you? Yes. Medline Plus, that's a great site. Yes. What kind of information do you need? Uh, Here's a question that actually is something that I was asked a very long time ago by a patron before I even had my library degree. It's been a while. A patron that you recognized from the local TV news crew comes in looking for an article from the local paper on this sort of a this day in history kind of feature. And he says he thinks the article ran about 40 years ago, but he's not sure of the date. And the article was about what he describes as a publicity stunt with skydiving Santa diving into a local mall. What information do you need to find this for this person? So this article ran in a local paper about 40 years ago, but not sure of the date. Yes, what was the local mall? What newspaper it could have been? In this case, let's say that you know that it was the whatever the local paper was for that area that's been long-standing community paper. What other kinds of questions? Yeah, yeah. That's a good point. Yes, if it's a, a lengthy process, what what other possible information? Things that you might want to consider with this one. Maybe you have the paper in question on microfilm, or maybe you have it in a database. If it's on microfilm, you're going to probably need to narrow the date down. Is there a way that you can narrow the date? So perhaps they know what, like if it was, for example, the skydiving Santa, it's probably sometime before Christmas. Um, Other questions, other things that you might ask about this? So I find this an interesting example because it has a lot of elements that, yeah, local paper has an archivist. Um, the backstory to this was, it was in fact when I was working as an archivist at a local paper, and one of the reporters asked this question, which changes it a little bit from the context, but yeah, good point. Who sponsored the event, or what was involved? A number of challenges here that I think are relevant to the search process. This is a very much a learn from my mistakes kind of thing. Do you know the name of the person that was skydiving? Probably not. It's much more memorable to say skydiving Santa than it is to say Joe Smith, yada yada. The local mall, what location. If you have index terms for or search like through clip files or print reference of Santa, historical Christmas events. A couple of things that I learned from this. First of all, people's memories are very porous when it comes to dates. You'll run into this sometimes with looking up, oh, it was on a TV show that I saw, last fall sometime. And it turns out it was like 3 years ago or whatever. So time frames can be very nebulous for most people. In this case, the reporter knew that it had happened on a Thanksgiving weekend because it was like the Saturday after Thanksgiving, but didn't know what year. We narrowed it down to like a 10-year ballpark so that we could go in and look at the microfilm, and did not find anything in that time frame for Thanksgiving Saturdays. So I went back to the drawing board and searched our archives for skydiving. Here's the other lesson. Skydiving at that time frame was more commonly called parachuting. So think of your alternate search terms. The end result was someone else who had lived in the area at that time remembered that they had postponed the event for a week because of weather. So it wasn't the Saturday after Thanksgiving, it was the following weekend. And we did eventually find it. So just a few lessons there. Consider all time frames, narrow it down in particular directions, alternate search terms. A lot of good suggestions there. So I want to go back to a question that someone posted earlier. Patrons looking for a book for her mother that is struggling with their memory, wanted something with few characters and simple plots. That is an excellent question. How would you go about searching for that sort of thing? What sources would you use? What kind of search terms or tools or resources? What questions would you ask of this, if any? It's actually quite a common question. And what kind of topics? That's a great start. Start with the genres that she likes to read, only a little more simple. Novelist is a great place to start. They have limiters. Short stories or novellas. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Good question. Does she like audiobooks or does she prefer print, or maybe both? I also would probably start with novelist for this particular one, and use some, simple plot lines as well as maybe the genre that the patron enjoys. Perhaps if she's open to children's or young adult books that are a little bit more simple reading level, you could maybe look at like a Lexile search kind of thing. Or they have a whole grouping of books that's high interest, low reading level. Graphic novels is a great suggestion if she enjoys, seeing something more visual. Possibly also older books from the time period when this reader was younger, or things that she remembers from her youth or from her childhood. Quite often with memory issues, the patient will remember far away things better than things that happened more recently. So if she read it as a child or a young adult, she would maybe be more familiar with the storyline. That's a good question. What kind of content? If they really want the spicy romance novels, but they need something more simple, perhaps a short story would be better than looking to, the young adult or children's literature version. Good, excellent. Any other specific ideas for that topic? Some very, very good ideas here. That's a great site. alz.org website. I'm guessing ALZ is Alzheimer's Association. Yes. Yes, that's true. Some of the older topics may be weeded, but if it's a classic, it might be available open source through something like, Project Gutenberg, that kind of thing, depending on how older we're looking at. Excellent suggestions. Does anybody have other reference questions, either a type of question or a specific example that you find challenging, would perhaps like to walk through or get some ideas? Okay, it doesn't look like we're getting any other questions about that. So we'll go ahead and move on. And if you think of a specific example that you'd like to mention, certainly type it in chat and we'll look at that. So we'll move forward again here. Okay, so when to use which sites? Do we have, who all is familiar with Discus here? What level of familiarity are you looking at in terms of our electronic resources? Do you have a favorite or a most commonly used Discus or electronic resource that you really enjoy and you find that you use a lot? Yeah, lots of great kids databases. Novelist is fantastic. Learning Express is great. I love it. Any particular of the kids databases that you use, or just all of the above kind of? Yes, Discus in general is a resource that a lot of patrons aren't familiar with or don't know that we have available. And it's sometimes hard to convince them to give it a try or, to use it for what they need. I'm hoping we're moving past the point where teachers specifically are concerned about our electronic resources as being online or website resources. I know back in the day when I started as a reference librarian, many teachers and even college professors were not comfortable with our online resources and would not see them as equally valid as a book or as even a print periodical, um, even though it's really the same information in a more readable format. So I'm actually going to switch over and we'll take a look at Discus in case we have anyone here who's not familiar with some of these resources, because it does have a lot of articles and that sort of thing, but it also has a bunch of other resources that we may not think of. Let's see. Good to pull this up here. Is everyone seeing the Discus website on my screen? Yes. Okay. So now, just to say, if you or your colleagues, staff members, patrons, etc., need more training help with that, we do have a training calendar and some resources over here. And the electronic resources staff are very happy to come out to any library or to work with you online to demonstrate some of these things, particularly if you have partnerships with the schools or with homeschool groups or other organizations. So to look at a few things here. And I am just going to run through a quick search here to show the basic interface if anyone here has not used the search terms. And then we can look, if we have more time, at some of the specific resources. So we do have a basic search box here at the top. And we'll just put in climate change. Oops. It's a very generic search. So, and this is something that you can show to a patron And, you know, certainly a high school or college student should probably be able to be familiar with this, but it may be a little intimidating at first. So if you can kind of break down the parts of it, they may find it, yeah, the subject guides certainly help. I find that they have a lot of built-in structure and guidance. It's just a little busy if you're used to seeing a website, but they have a lot of good features. So this is the part where if you're showing this to a patron, you can help them narrow it down and also show them some of the features here with the refined results. I'm going to make my screen a little bigger because I know sometimes it's a little hard to see. Maybe that's helpful for everybody. So you can show your patrons, particularly the limiting of the dates, the limiting of type of items. A lot of professors particularly want them to only have the scholarly or the peer-reviewed journals rather than magazines, trade publications, that sort of thing. And a lot of beginning researchers, high school or early college students, have a little trouble narrowing down exactly what that means. And so this is a help for them to be able to click and say only scholarly journals. But they also can look at, sometimes professors will ask for primary source documents. That's another one that tends to trip up students. You also can search by Lexile level. So if you know that you have perhaps a patron who's not up to a very high reading level or a younger student, that would be a great way to narrow it down. Subject terms are of course very helpful. One thing that I think a lot of students don't realize, and we'll look at this, is it'll give all this information, and if they have, oh, I want more articles like this, they can click on climate change and mental health or resilience or health disparities. And this will take them to everything with that subject term. The other thing, if you're not familiar with this, you can see over here as well as in the results list, some articles have the full text as HTML and some have it as PDF. PDF is nice and it's downloadable and savable and all of that, but the HTML also has things like they can listen to it. That's very helpful from an accessibility standpoint. You can even choose what accent you want to listen to it in. Volume. Text highlighting settings, if you have a student who's got a reading issue or a visual issue and needs a little bit more contrast or highlighting the words, that's helpful. And you can download the audio to listen later. Students may not realize they can also save it to their Google Drive, print it out, email. The citation thing. I wish they'd had citation builders when I was in school. I missed the boat on that. It's very unfair. So you can see here, as I said, the full text HTML and the PDF. And it very helpfully tells you what type of source. Like this one here is an ebook and this one is an academic journal. We've got some video results. What questions do we have about this, the basic Discus search feature with the results? Do we have questions about that? Yes, yes, that's a very good point. The citation builders are not 100% reliable. It's a good starting place, but they still need to check their work a little bit. Even so, better than nothing. Other questions, comments? Let's see. One thing I have noticed too, speaking of citations, is a lot of, sometimes you see this in high school teachers, they do not have a clear understanding of a bibliography versus an annotated bibliography. And I've had them ask the student for an annotated bibliography when in fact they just needed regular bibliography, works cited. So that is, if you can get a hold of the assignment page and figure out what they're actually asking for, that's helpful. But unfortunately, sometimes the teacher themselves do not quite understand. Let's see. Yes, good question, Kate. Thank you. Federated search, yes. Multiple data sources at once. For example, if you go down here, you can see the different databases that make up the basics of our platform. So you can choose to only search Academic Search Premier, or you specifically want the Professional Development Collection or the Points of View Reference Center that may fit your needs better. All of those are functioning under this single search, and you can kind of divide it up. So that's the basic search. Whereas if we would go into a specific database here, like let's find a children's search. Like, for example, you can do the smart search, which we have here, which searches all of these things. But if you specifically need topics for middle school students, you're probably not going to need an academic journal, American Journal of Public Health, for your 6th grader. So you would probably limit to or specifically choose something like, oh, that's high school. Britannica Middle School, or Culturegrams, or Explora for middle schools, Middle Search Plus, that sort of thing. Did that answer your question? Is that kind of what you needed to know? Other questions about this? This is also a good source for not just articles, but we do have ebooks. There are videos or that sort of thing. Primary sources if that's something you need. A big one for the schools is science experiments. We get that question quite a lot. So something like Learn 360 would have more multimedia, video, interactive things, maps, science experiments, that sort of thing. What other questions do we have here? I find with this class, either the group has collectively had quite a bit of experience with using the Discus resources and has more advanced questions, or we spend quite a lot of time just looking at the basics. So if there are any particular databases or particular reference questions that we haven't covered that you'd like to look closer at, that would be fine as well. Kind of a quiet group today. Narrowing WorldCat to local holdings. That's a great question, and let's take a look at that. I had thought that there is a way to do that, but I haven't looked at the website in a little bit. So let's see. Do you have a specific book or topic, or I usually go with something pretty simple like Harry Potter that's straightforward because I know that I will get results. Now, here it looks to me like it is in fact narrowing it to just your local, like it has University of South Carolina, Richland Library. So you can put your location and narrow it. Is that what you were looking for, or did you need it to be more specific, or? You also are able to here connect to the South Carolina State Library catalog right here. Find a copy does. Okay. So this will take you out to the SC Lens site. It's not really what we needed, but Benefits of WorldCat versus a specific library system. If you're looking in terms of searching for an item, I've found in general, WorldCat is good if it's rare and you're not sure if any libraries in your area have it. If it's something like, oh, where do I find this particular book in a fairly common series that's all checked out at my library? Typically, it's better to go to the library system. Sometimes the holdings in WorldCat are not updated all that frequently. So they will be looking at local catalogs for Richland County or Lexington County or whatever, but they may not be updated in their records, so it may appear to be available, but when you go to that location's catalog, either it's been weeded or is missing, or of course, WorldCat doesn't say that it's checked out. It just says, is it part of their holdings? So sometimes you run into issues with that. Did that answer the question that you needed? Like, for example, here's Richland County, and you still have to go and search the actual catalog. What other questions? We do have a few minutes still. We'll go back here. Ask a librarian specifically for Discus. Let me get back to that. There's a contact us button for Discus. You can email, and we do have a Discus listserv. They specifically don't have a contact us button here. We do have on our website let's see, we have an Ask a Librarian, which if you have a Discus question, someone here can help you or direct you. Discus themselves doesn't have enough staff to continually staff a chat service. You can also do Book a Librarian with us. Practice tests. Someone mentioned earlier Learning Express. That is probably your best source for practice tests. They have all of the big topics like GRE, ASVAB, Praxis, test prep, ACT, SAT, AP exams. Let's see. So this is a list here of the various practice exams. So let's see. Military exams, ASVAB, officer candidate, various, I tend to use ASVAB as the example because I used to work in a library with a very heavy military presence, and we could not keep ASVAB books on the shelf. So that's my go-to, but it also has the NCLEX nursing exams, the praxis for the teaching exams. It looks like it's under the teaching exams, so it has quite a few. It looks like there are several different types or focus things here, like praxis early childhood, elementary, middle school, etc. So core practice exams, let's see. Yeah, it has a lot of really, really unusual ones or good ones. I did not know that there was an air traffic controller exam or that they had it listed. I've typically heard the nursing, teaching, and ASVAB ones, honestly, but like, oh, commercial driver's license, cosmetology. Um, it also has computer skills, which a lot of the computer skills stuff you can find online on, for example, the GCF Learn Free site, but like popular software. Let's see. Let's see, it has career prep, job search and workplace skills. So it has, let's see, interviewing, resumes, networking, business writing. It has that kind of skills. It also, let's see, adult core skills sometimes. That's a good question, and I don't know. I know that you can create an account in for the Discus or EBSCO resources. Let me see. I don't know specifically about search alerts. I know you can save search results or like have saved searches. I would think that that would be possible. We do still have a few minutes if anyone would like to request that we look at a particular database. Yeah, you can create an account with EBSCO, so you should be able to at least save search results or save a search. And if you've saved a search, I don't know why they wouldn't create search alerts. I have not ever done that. There are so many good databases. Learning Express is great. Culturegrams is great, but it's pretty self-explanatory. It's geographic. You know, if you have a kid that needs a report about a state or a country, Culturegrams is wonderful. It's very encyclopedia-like. Novelist is a little different, so let's look at that one real quick. This is a great resource for reader's advisory, figuring out what books you may have. And it has a basic search or an advanced search. This is the advanced search, and you can choose to search for the title, the author, the series, subject, all of that, genre, audience, adult, teen, children's, as well as, this is really tiny and I realize that, but let me blow it up a little. Kind of falls off the page that way, but it's easier to see. You can do a publication date range, whether it's an award winner, search by author's nationality, culture, the runtime of audiobooks, always helpful. Lexile range, if you're looking for children's books, Lexile range is great. This is interesting, and I didn't remember this was here. They have a media mentions section. So if you have the Oprah's Book Club, let's just see what that brings up. So that, if you go to the result here, this is, yeah, here in the media mentions, there's our search. It was mentioned on Oprah's Book Club in November 2019. Yes, yes. I'm sure that they added that because everyone gets that question. I saw it on this one show. It was a Oprah Book Club book. No, it was some other celebrity book club book. So yeah, it will give you not only just the description, but also the appeal terms, the genres, themes, the tone and writing style. Some people, you know, they're looking for a particular book. Like, oh, not it's about the same thing, but it feels the same, or it has the same sense. And that's really useful. Novelist has kind of made a thing of reader's advisory based on actually what you like about the book, and not just, oh, it was a book about dogs, I want more books about dogs, because that isn't really a lot of what people, you know, some people read for topic or theme, but others read for writing style, for tone, for particular character traits, how fast the book reads, that kind of thing. So if you come down here also, you get the book reviews in various places, and you can search for similar ones. Like perhaps you want magical realism books with a dramatic tone about mothers. And you want it to be character driven. That might be too specific, but we'll see. Yeah, I picked too many specific things and it brought just that particular one back. But that's how it works. You can choose which ones you like. This is also a good one for I remember this book and it was about this character, but I don't remember the title, and I read it when I was 10, and you know, you remember details but not title or author. And you can, like they say here, their example is Japan, 1930, women. Oops. It's running a little bit slow today. So for those questions where you don't have a whole lot to go on, it's helpful. And it will also give you title and author read-alikes, which is great. We have just a couple of minutes here. What other questions does anyone have? We've kind of run through a large amount of information. If you have any further questions about reference questions, reader's advisory, technology reference is always a challenge, any of that sort of thing, feel free to contact me. And as I said before, if you're looking for something or you want help with our databases or our resources, we do have an Ask a Librarian on our contact page, or feel free to email any of the state library staff. We can help you out or find you a good person to answer that. So thank you for attending. I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen and stop recording here.